All right, can everyone? Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Wow. Sorry, I didn't mean to make you all jump. I won't go over the introductions. Sorry for that. For those of you at home, that was on me after stressing multiple times to talk into the mic. And for those of you at home, I will introduce myself. I am Tony DeVaul, Chief of the City of Takoma Park Police Department, and I will continue introducing staff that are here. We have Detective Charles Earl in the back, and we also have Officer Garcia, who's all the way in the back. So the format tonight is going to be a hybrid in-person model. We're going to give a presentation about crime in your area. We're going to talk specifically about some incidents that occurred in Ward 3, the robbery on Woodland and some of the response time and other logistics regarding that, and also the shots fired incidents that we've had over on 4th Avenue and Eastern Avenue. We also have a representative from the District of Columbia. Captain Terry is if he hasn't joined us, he's going to join us to address crime across the border. So we're going to go through that, give the stats, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. We're going to take questions from people in the audience, and we're also going to take questions from people on Zoom, as well as questions that we received in advance. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Gibson to say a few words.
Thank you, Chief. Brandy Gibson here, your new Ward 3 council member, and it's good to see everybody and on the tube as well. I appreciate that we have this opportunity to touch and see and talk with our police force and learn what they're doing and what we can do, and having continuing communication. And I'm sure that the chief will talk about how that communication needs to continue all the time, not just when we hold meetings. This is a long-term relationship to help our city and our ward be safe. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. I'm a 30-year or approximately resident on Goody Avenue, which is kind of about in the middle of Ward 3, in between the Woodland armed robbery and the Pinecrest gunshots. So sort of feel in between right now. So I'm glad to see you all here and appreciate your participation. And this is not the end of our discussion. This is a continuance.
Thank you. I do want to touch on one thing before we get started. Any of you have been following the news. There's been some horrific incident in Memphis, Tennessee, involving 5 Memphis police officers. I've not seen the video, but I understand that the video is horrific, heinous, and horrific. All 5 police officers have been charged. I have not seen the video, but based on what I've heard, absolutely unacceptable, appalling, and not something that we would ever condone here. More information will come out when the video is released, but I just want to speak to our community and say that's not what we do here. It is not us against them. It's all of us together. We are not warriors. We are guardians of you all. So I just want us to come together as a community when that video comes out, and understand that we are here with you. We stand with you, not against you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Misha Rowe, our crime analyst, who's going to give an overview of some crime stats in the city overall, but more specifically in Ward 3, and more specifically on Woodland Avenue and Sycamore, because there was some concern about that.
Hello. For those of you who didn't hear at the beginning, my name is Misha Rowe. I'm the acting crime analyst for Takoma Park Police Department. And so I'm just going to go over some statistics regarding the entire city of Takoma Park, and then focus in on Ward 3, as well as some specific concerns and incidents that have been going on in this area. So to start out, we're going to focus on the entire city of Takoma Park and get the general idea of what's been going on in the past year of 2022. So this is a visual showing the comparisons of the Part 1 crimes from 2021 to 2022. And to clarify, Part 1 crimes are what we measure in criminal analysis, and that involves the crimes of homicide, excuse me. Homicide, rape, robbery, assault, burglary, larceny, thefts from autos, and motor vehicle thefts. those are the part one crimes. Those are the 8 crimes that we focus on when measuring crimes. We do still measure all the other reports, but those are the ones that we measure in crime analysis. So to go into that overview, in general, in the city of Takoma Park, from 2021 to 2022, Part 1 crimes increased around 23% throughout the entire city. In 2021, there were 580 criminal incidents, and in 2022, there were 716 incidents. The Part 1 crimes that saw a decrease from 2021 to 2022 were homicide, rape, robbery, and thefts from autos. And those percentages are here on the screen. And homicide decreased by 33%, rape decreased by 25%, and robbery decreased by 35%. Thefts from autos decreased by 33%. Part 1 crimes that saw an increase from 2021 to 2022 in the entire city of Takoma Park were assault, burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle thefts. And to clarify some of the numbers on this screen, you're seeing numbers like 100% increase, 200% increase. To clarify those incidents, it's numbers, so it's very concerning percentages, but the number of incidents, it's small number of incidents to start, and then an increase in those incidents, but in terms of statistics, it's a large percentage increase, but still a low number of incidents total. Ward 6 was in the majority. It was the ward with the most number of crimes in 2022. It accounted for 43% of the crimes that occurred in Takoma Park for the year of 2022. As far as the ward percentages that saw increases and decreases in Takoma Park in 2022, Ward 1, Ward 4, and Ward 5 saw decreases in crime in 2022 compared to 2021. And increases that were seen in wards in Takoma Park were in Ward 2, Ward 3, and Ward 6 from 2021 to 2022. This visual is a pie chart that displays which wards account for how much crime in the total of the whole city of Takoma Park. So Ward 3 accounted for approximately 16% of crime in the city of Takoma Park for the year of 2022. This visual displays each wards 1 through 6, the number of incidents that occurred in 2021, the number of incidents that occurred in 2022, and the percentage change from 2021 to 2022 for each ward. This visual gets into the Part 1 crimes that were seen in Ward 3, specifically in 2021 and 2022, and the percentage change that occurred for each Part 1 crime between those years. So in Ward 3 specifically, homicide saw an increase from 0 incidents in 2021 to 1 incident in 2022. So that was a 100% increase. Rape saw a 100% decrease. Robbery saw a 66% decrease. Assault went from 0 to 5, and there has been an increase in assaults throughout the entire city. A large number of those accounted for by domestic incidents. Burglary saw a 60% increase. Larcenies saw a 62.5% increase, and thefts from autos saw a 1% decrease. Motor vehicle theft saw a 20% increase. For the total of Part 1 crimes in Ward 3 from 2021 to 2022, there was a 20.8% increase. And this visual displays the number of incidents for each Part 1 type of crime for each month of 2022. And I believe this whole presentation and slideshow will be made available after this meeting. It'll be posted online, and so it will be made available for anyone to look at and take their time with the numbers if anyone's interested. This chart shows the percentage of each Part 1 crime, how much of that crime was accounted for by Ward 3 out of the entire city of Takoma Park. So Ward 3 accounted for 50% of homicide in Takoma Park, one of the 2 homicide incidents we had this year in 2022. Ward 3 accounted for 0% of the rape in 2022. Ward 3 accounted for 4% of the robberies that occurred in 2022, 9% of the assaults, 17% of the burglaries, 8% of the larcenies, and 32% of the thefts from autos, and 22% of the motor vehicle thefts. And as it showed in the pie chart earlier, it accounted for approximately 16% of the crime in all of Takoma Park total. So to focus in a little more on some of the incidents we saw in 2022 in Ward 3, I focused on the top 5 repeated locations, or hotspots we call them, that happened in 2022. So the locations that saw the most crime in Ward 3 in 2022. That was 7001 Carroll Avenue. That was the Ace Hardware store. The Victory Tower Apartments on Carroll Avenue. The Takoma Park Beverage Company on Laurel Avenue. The vacant residence on 4th Avenue. And the Maggio Roofing Chamberlain Washington Incorporated Company on Sligo Mill Road. Those are the top 5 locations in Ward 3 that saw the most crime in 2022, with the specific number of incidences listed below. And to get further into that, the Ace Hardware location saw 6 larcenies, 2 thefts from autos, 2 assaults, 1 vandalism, 2 peace disturbances. The Victory Tower Apartments saw 1 assault, 1 theft from auto, 1 vandalism, 1 peace disturbance, 2 frauds, and a missing person. The Takoma Park Beverage Company saw 3 larcenies, 1 pocket-picking incident, 1 burglary, recovered property and emergency petitions. The vacant residence on 4th Avenue saw 2 burglaries, 1 vandalism, a court order violation, and shots fired incidences in 2022. And the Maggio Roofing Chamberlain Washington Incorporated Company saw 1 theft from auto, 1 larceny, 1 motor vehicle theft, and 1 trespassing in 2022. Okay. And we also wanted to go over the boundary changes that occurred in Ward 3 in 2022. These boundary changes went into effect in November 2022. And we wanted to go over this just so you could see how it might affect the crime numbers in 2022 and moving forward. So this was a previous map of the Ward 3 boundaries from before the boundary change in November. And it's the blue shaded area outlined by the blue there. There we go. This is the current map of Ward 3 as of November 2022. And it is outlined, the blue line outline indicates the old boundary before November. And again, this presentation will be made available after this, so there'll be more time to go over it. Okay, and then the shots fired incidences that have occurred in Ward 3 have definitely been a big concern, and so we went looking into that. These have been, of all the shots fired incidents in 2022 in all of Takoma Park, with the addresses that were associated with those shots fired reports, as well as the dates when they occurred and when they were reported. This is a map of where the shots fired incidents occurred in Takoma Park. The shaded area is the entire city of Takoma Park, and the blue outline near the bottom is specifically Ward 3. Each blue marker icon indicates a shots fired incident that happened in 2022. And to go over some brief statistics of these incidents, most shots fired incidents occurred between Saturday and Sunday from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. The weekdays with the most number of reported shots fired incidents were Thursday and Saturday. And the majority of the shots fired in 2022 occurred at night, which in law enforcement terms is 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And to clarify, there are different ways of looking of statistically analyzing all these incidents. You can look at it by day of the week, by time of day, and then by day of the week and time of day. And so that just displays the results of all of those. And with a total of 4 to 5 reported shots fired incidents, Ward 3 accounted for approximately 33% of the shots fired incidents that occurred in Takoma Park in 2022. Woodland Avenue and Sycamore Avenue were also places that were noted for concern in Ward 3 in the year of 2022. And if the screen comes back on, it will show those numbers of the incidents that occurred in 2022.
We specifically wanted to touch on incidents that occurred on Woodland Avenue and Sycamore Avenue. Those of you know that we had a daytime robbery of someone doing construction on a residence there not too long ago, and we're going to give an update on that case later on this evening. But the incidents in 2022 on Woodland Avenue were 1 assault, 4 larcenies, which are thefts, and 1 burglary. The incidents on Sycamore Avenue in 2022 were 2 larcenies. Those are thefts and 1 vandalism. As Misha said, this PowerPoint will be made available online as well as this recording for people to go back and take a deep dive into it. I wanted to take a little bit of time to touch on significant arrests that we've made related to citywide, but also to the ward specifically. So Captain Sipley is going to just give a brief overview to some arrests that we've made, and then we'll go on to an overview of some significant incidents in Ward 3.
Okay, well, thank you very much. First, I wanted just to start off to say that this morning, our patrol officers made an arrest for a burglary over in the 800 block of Larch Avenue. Apparently, it was a juvenile suspect. He broke into a vehicle, got a garage door opener, and police responded and were able to apprehend the juvenile. We also discovered that he's also responsible for 2 other theft from autos in that particular area. So they're currently dealing with that situation as of right now. So that was a good arrest that we were able to catch this person. Just to let you know, obviously you can see the burglary percentage is kind of high. Back in May, June, July, we had a rash of residential burglaries, nighttime residential burglaries, where the suspect or suspects were entering people's residence at nighttime while the owners were home, and then were stealing their car keys and then stealing their vehicles. This occurred along Eastern Avenue all the way up to Montgomery College with some of the residential streets around there, and off New Hampshire Avenue. The investigative unit, patrol, our SAT unit worked vigorously trying to catch this individual. I will say we were able to identify a suspect. His name was Quincy Jones. He lived across the D.C. border over off of Kansas Avenue. And we were able to link him to at least 10 to 15 burglaries that occurred in Takoma Park. We recovered all the vehicles and a lot of the victim's properties that were stolen during the course of the burglaries. He currently, I believe, had a 5-year sentence and is currently serving 18 months. They suspended all of his sentence but 18 months, so he has to serve 18 months in jail. So that was a big case, and I think would bring down a lot of the numbers of the burglaries. I think we pretty much closed out all the burglaries that impacted Ward 3 during that time frame. And as well as the auto thefts, because we recovered all the vehicles as well associated with those burglaries. So kudos to the Patrol Division and CID and SAC. They worked wonders solving that case. Just to give you an update regarding the Woodland robbery, the units responded there as well as the detectives for the robbery. In this particular case, the suspect, I guess a friend of the victim was walking towards the vehicle. The suspect pulled up his shirt, said he had a gun, and told the guy to leave. So he ran, told the victim what was going on, and the suspects ended up stealing tools from the back of the work truck. So the next day, the victim indicated his phone was pinging down in D.C. So detectives responded to D.C. They were able to locate a vehicle matching the description, and they ran the tag, which came back stolen through Virginia, and then the vehicle itself came back stolen through Montgomery County Police. So the following day, investigators processed the vehicle. They took latent prints, they did DNA swabs, and they found numerous tools located within the vehicle, and they were able to link 2 more theft from autos that actually occurred in Virginia, and they were able to identify 2 additional victims in Virginia. So at this point, we're kind of waiting for the lab to do DNA analysis and get results back from the latent prints. Unfortunately, at this point, we don't have any other suspects developed at this time. We're hoping to get something with the processing of evidence that we recovered. So that's kind of where we're at with that particular case. Okay. And as you're aware, we also had the homicide, the advanced auto parts. Unfortunately, this case is still open. We have not been able to obtain any leads. We even had the news media do a clip on TV in attempts to generate some type of phone call or leads. And unfortunately, we haven't been receiving any leads, and we don't really have that much substantial evidence to try to locate this suspect. So we're, still plugging away at it, trying to see what we can develop, but the case is still open at this time. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for that.
All right, thank you very much. And Captain Sipley touched on Woodlawn, and I'll touch that incident, and I'll touch on the response time because I know there were some questions around that. But I did want to update residents about the shots fired incidents, 4th Avenue, Eastern Avenue area. Our detectives have identified a suspect or suspects that are juveniles who live in the District of Columbia. We're working feverishly with the District of Columbia to hopefully make an arrest. We believe they were involved in almost all, if not all, of those weapon discharges in your neighborhood. I won't go into detail because it's an active investigation, but we're very, very confident that these were the individuals involved in all of those incidents, and they live in very close proximity to Takoma Park in the District of Columbia. We will continue to have the increased patrols in that area until we are able to definitively arrest the subjects, and we will let you know as soon as we get information on that. I understand this has been extremely unnerving, from finding bullets in cereal boxes to finding bullets on pillows. I mean, I can't imagine what you all have been living through. We have been doing everything we can to try to saturate that area to avoid having an occurrence, and I feel very confident in that we have the suspects that were just committing these reckless crimes. So an update hopefully will come in the near future, and if there are any specific questions that Detective Lieutenant Butler can answer, he will. He may not be able to answer specific questions. Regarding the incident on Woodlawn, there's been a lot of conversation about the response time and how calls for service work. I met with the homeowner at the location of where the robbery occurred, as well as the construction worker and some other residents a couple weekends ago, and gave a lot of information and background. And I'll try to give the Reader's Digest version of that tonight. So just a 911 call. If a 911 call comes in, it does not come to the Takoma Park Police Department. It goes to the Montgomery County Emergency Communications Center and is received by a call taker. That call taker then transfers the call to us, the Takoma Park Police Department, and we dispatch it. That's the way it works across the county. If you're in Germantown, the call taker still takes the call. That's how the 911 system works countywide. If you call our 270-1100, 301-270-1100 number, you get us directly. So the debate was, what should you call? And I will say to anyone that's listening, if you know the number, you should call us because you will get us directly, and you'll get a dispatcher who knows the geographic area and gonna get you there quicker. Now, not everyone knows 911. So everyone that's here that's listening and that does not have our number, I highly suggest you take out your phone now, and I will give the number multiple times. Our direct dispatch line is 301-270-1100. Yeah, 301-270-1100.
Just in terms of clarifying, that number can be used for emergency, non-emergencies, whatever that needs prompt action, or how would you counsel?
Yeah, let me just say the number again, 301-270-1100. As Councilmember Gibson said, that is our dispatch number. You can call that number if you have a non-emergency event or an emergency event. We do ask if you have an event that involves fire rescue response, a car accident, that you call 911 because that will get a dual response at the same time. They will dispatch fire rescue and the police at the same time. So on that particular call, the best we can ascertain, and if it came into our dispatch, we were going to play the call tonight, but it did not come into our dispatch, so we cannot play the audio of the call coming in. We're attempting to get that through the Montgomery County Emergency Communications Center. We're also working with them on some other issues that I'll touch on. But just the timeline, we are gauging that it took about 3 minutes at least for 4 minutes at least for the 911 dispatcher to transfer the call to our dispatcher. Our dispatcher almost simultaneously dispatched it to our police officers. Our police officers responded and got there in 3 to 4 minutes. First 2 officers were there. So the timeline, depending on, could have been anywhere from 7 to 9 minutes. But if you called directly into our dispatch center, that may have been lessened. And I'll go into detail if people have specific questions about that. So the question is, most of the people that live in the city know the 270-1100 number. I grew up in the city. I know that number before you even had to dial 301. So my suggestion is if you have an incident, especially in Ward 3, where you abut a lot of other jurisdictions, you may call on the line and you may be bumped around from DC 911 to Prince George's 911. So if you know our number, 301-270-1100, call it. You're going to get our dispatcher that can dispatch the call. 9 minutes is not the response time we at all expect for a robbery in progress in the middle of the day. That's not satisfactory. We're working with Montgomery County Emergency Communication Center on that and other real-time information about getting us information in real time about incidents. We had an armed robbery of a mail carrier just outside the city, and we did not get instantaneous, this was in Ward 5, right off of Flower Avenue. We did not get instantaneous notification, which is critical. So we're working with the Emergency Communication Center on this and also on just overall protocol for getting us information because we think it's critical. Like I said, that was a really scary incident, and I know there's been a lot of misinformation that we have 67 officers and 87 officers and 10 officers working at a time. We have 43 sworn officers in the city of Takoma Park, and that includes myself. On any given day, we either have 1 supervisor and 4 to 6 officers working the entire city. Some may be in court, some may be tied up on other calls, et cetera. So we try to saturate areas that are problem areas. And going back to the crime stats, I think some of the crime stats are not accurate depictions of actual occurrences, specifically related to thefts and vandalisms. They are underreported. And I stress and I plead with people, report those crimes. We allocate our resources based off of incidents of crime. So you may have an incident where someone broke into or got into your car, took some change, but nothing else. I'm not going to report it. We may be able to get valuable evidence, video, or maybe latent prints off of your vehicle that may lead to the arrest of someone who committed a burglary. That is a good reason. And also a good reason is we look at hotspots. We have heat maps where we can see time of occurrence and number of occurrences. So it's critical that we know this. I plead with people, please call us. You're not inconveniencing us. We can take calls over the phone if it's inconvenient for you, but we want to know at the very least on these calls we'd like to go out and get evidence. So with that, I'm gonna stop for a second. I don't know if we have the DC captain on yet, and I don't know how we're going to get him live here. So I don't know if we're going to be able to have him say something, but we have him here, and if there are specific questions regarding DC on Zoom, he can answer them directly on Zoom, and then we can have Kathy relay that here to the room. Or if you have a question here in the room that you want to relay to him, we have him available to answer questions. With that, we are going to open it up to questions, and the way I'm going to do this is we're going to pass the mic around in the room at the beginning, and then we're going to go to questions on Zoom, and then I'm going to read some pre-questions. So raise your hand if anyone in the room has any questions, and we'll give you a mic. Can we take the mic to... Yeah, right here. Captain Sipper, you got... Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Hi, Jesse Stepler. I've lived in Takoma Park for about a decade. My question concerns the level of personnel in the Takoma Park Police Department, especially given the increase in crime last year, and now it's only anecdotal, but seeing incidents that are troubling in Ward 3 in the first quarter, the first month really. And this goes to our council member, Randy in particular. When are we going to look at the force level of the Tacoma Park Police Department, which, 43 officers, 17,000 people. We abut DC. Their ratio is, I think, more than twice that. And especially with issues pouring over, the question is, will there be a force level evaluation done, and will we look at adding more personnel and resources?
I'll just answer real quick before I turn it over to the council member. We did a citywide organizational assessment last year. A lot of the numbers that we based that assessment off of were COVID numbers, so they were a lot lower. So any assessment on the staffing of allotment of the Tacoma Park Police Department was not based on last year's crime numbers.
There is one very recently, I guess there had been a hiring freeze for a number of positions in the city, and that hiring freeze was rescinded. That meant that two police officer positions, will be open, go through the hiring process. That's my understanding.
Yes.
Oh, turn this damn thing on. So I was saying that there had been a hiring freeze in the city, but that hiring freeze was rescinded. Therefore, there are two positions, two police officer positions that presumably are in the process of being recruited for.
I have the microphone. I'm going to ask my question real quick. This is for the crime analyst. I didn't see shots fired as a Part 1 crime. Is that not a Part 1 crime?
I can answer the question. No, it's not.
Okay.
Not unless someone is hit, and then it becomes obviously an assault.
A homicide or an
correct,
assault.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you. I'm Claudine Schweber, obviously Ward 3. I have a quick comment and a question. Can you hear me better now? Okay. No, I understand. I just didn't want it to be booming. First of all, a quick comment. I think we have to be careful about this percentage data because people get correctly freaked out. One of the things you see in there was one case where it was 0 in 21 and 1 in 22. Whoa, 100% increase. I understand, given my profession, et cetera, why we do that. But I think given the numbers in Takoma Park, we would be better emphasizing the actual numbers because they're not really big. Now, my question is, what can members of the community do to help lessen that? And the reason I ask is, quite often, I get the reports that Kathy puts out and so on that come out. There were, for example, several thefts from auto, and it turned out they were not locked. So what can members of the community do to lessen the opportunity for some people who are wandering with whatever they're doing? And I think that community members' responsibility in terms of specifically what they can do would be extremely helpful.
Great. Okay. Okay, I'll repeat the question. I think the first comment was about how we record our crime stats by percentages, and that people may be shocked when they look at some of the percentages. I think Claudine mentioned an incident where we had 0 events last year, now we had 1, so it goes up by 100%. So she was questioning that why we do our crime stats that way. The reason we do it's a universal way to report crime stats, and we stress to people, don't get into the percentage, look at the numbers. Overall, crime is really low in Takoma Park, and we have had record lows over the last 5 to 7 years. So even though we've increased by 20 some odd percent in the city, we're kind of back at where we were 5 to 7 years ago. Now, that being said, every one of those Part 1 offenses has a victim. Every one does. So we don't want any crime. That's not to downplay victims of crime. We don't want any incidents of crime. The second question was, how can residents assist the police in crime fighting? And Claudine mentioned people leaving their cars open. Kathy all the time puts out information about crime prevention, whether or not it's locking your shed, whether or not it's locking your door, all of this information. So it's very important to us that you heed this information, that you lock your cars, that you make sure you're vigilant about not leaving valuables in your vehicles, that you lock your sheds if you have a $2,000 Trek bike. We also have residential surveys that we do where we can come out and we can survey the security of your house and make recommendations. Those are available. So these are tools that are available. We also have resources like we will check your house if you're on vacation. Take advantage of that. You're not going to get that in a larger department. So I say this, what we need from you is our eyes and ears. A lot of times people see stuff and they're like, well, I saw someone break a window out, but I didn't know if it was his car or not. If it's suspicious, it's suspicious. If I'm locked out of my car, I don't think I'm going to break the window. If we screen calls, so if it is a quote-unquote profiling call, we're not going to respond out. But if it's legitimate, I see someone tampering with vehicles and they've pulled 4 doors of vehicles, we're going to come out and we want to know that. So we want to hear from you all. Please call us, contact us. And I will stress again, if you are a victim of a crime, call us. We need to know. We need to record that, and we need to make sure that we can follow up on that.
Chief, I just wanted to ask, could you give a little more explanation or description of what the residential surveys are that you're doing?
Sure. So what we would do is our trained residential survey experts would come out to your residence. They would check crime prevention through environmental design. They'd look at your bushes to see if they were obstructed. They look at the locks on your house. They look at whether or not you had a security system. All of these things that may lead to your house being a potential target. When people are looking for targets, whether it be thefts, whether it be burglaries, they're looking for the easy target. They don't want to have to get past a house that has a security system or has multiple locks. And I'm not saying we need to be under siege. I'm not saying that. But we need to also be smart about, having secure in our houses, in our vehicles, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to take a couple more in the audience, and then we'll go to Zoom. So anyone else here in the audience have any questions? All right. Oh, yes, sir. Can we pass the mic to the gentleman in the back, please?
So I'm just wondering about all the juveniles and the crime, and I guess I'm just curious as to how likely even arresting them is if that's gonna make a difference, and if there's anything else that maybe could be done or worked with the families or something like that.
You bring up 2 legitimate things. First of all, working with families. I've said it repeatedly at almost every community meeting I've been at. We are never going to solve this problem until we start taking a holistic view at what is causing crime. And I'm talking early on. If we don't look at the core reason that people are committing crime, lack of resources, lack of education, lack of jobs, lack of food, lack of all of these things, we are not going to address this problem. That's a much bigger problem and a conversation for another day. There's a question, pre-question that's in here that I'll touch on that. We are concerned about some new laws that came into effect in the state of Maryland about charging juveniles. And I don't know if, Lieutenant Butler, if you want to touch on some of that, or anyone else wants to touch on what we can and cannot charge juveniles under a certain age. But it's a problem. It is a problem. There's no question that juvenile crime has increased. We've had a lot of these violent crimes that are committed by juveniles. And I think that there's a lot of reasons that is happening. Those of you who have been in this area for a long time understand and may remember Marion Barry, who was the mayor of the District of Columbia. One of the best things he did was a summer youth program. If you had a job and you felt good about yourself and you had money in your pocket, you're less likely to go break into a vehicle. So we need to, as a city, take a holistic view at what we're doing for our youth. The Reimagining Public Safety Task Force came up with several recommendations directly related to that. We'll be looking at those outside of law enforcement. So anyone that thinks that this issue is just a police issue and we're going to solve the problem, you're gravely mistaken. We are one piece of the puzzle, but it's all of us that are going to need to take part in making sure that we are addressing this public safety issue. So yeah, I wouldn't say that it doesn't do anything, because a lot of times, although we may not be able to charge these juveniles criminally for certain offenses, or they may get a slap on the wrist, it may expose them to resources outside of the criminal justice system that they need. So I still think there is value in holding them accountable for what they do. We can't really, get into the semantics sometimes of whether or not it's a slap on the wrist and they're out and the next day. But I think that until we take that holistic view, I think we're going to be back to square one. So, why don't we turn it over to ones on Zoom? And Kathy, if you can just read out what they're asking. We just need the mic from City TV. So we're going to go to Zoom now. We're just going to take a couple questions on Zoom, and Kathy is going to read them out, and then we'll answer them.
Okay, the first one is, does your definition of entire city include both the Maryland and DC side, or just the Maryland side of Takoma Park?
The city of Takoma Park only encompasses Montgomery County, Maryland. All of our stats are directly related to Montgomery County, city of Takoma Park, Maryland.
Could you please clarify the difference between burglary and larceny?
Sure. Since I'm talking all the time, I'll turn it over to one of our detectives so I can drink some water. You want?
Okay. A burglary is the entry of a residential residence, like a person's home, or a commercial establishment with the intent to steal. So they're either forcing their way into a person's house or into a business by breaking a window or walking in the middle of the night into an unsecured door. Once you cross the plane into an establishment or a person's home, then it's considered a burglary. A larceny is merely like going into Walgreens and taking something off the shelf and then walking out without paying for it. And that's a larceny. So it's basically a theft. A robbery is a crime against a person where it is a demand of property by force or threat of force.
For shots fired, are they all reported shots fired, or was anyone hit? And were shells found at each location, and has anyone been arrested?
We had one incident, shots fired at the Advance Auto, which was a homicide. That was not related to the cases that we're currently investigating on 4th Avenue. That was an isolated incident. And not all of these shots fired cases involve shell casings being discovered. I think I got the indication from Detective Butler that 3 of the cases, shell casings were discovered. So a lot of times we hear sound of shots, and it may be in Prince George's County, it may be in the District of Columbia. So we respond out, and we don't necessarily find anything. I think that answered the 3-part question. So we'll go again to a couple more on Zoom, and then I'll read a couple that we got in advance.
Did Quincy Jones work alone?
Getting an indication from Lieutenant Butler, no, he did not. He had accomplices.
And I'm going to read this because it's just a brief message of thanks to our Takoma Park Police Force. We appreciate all that you do in our community, and we thank you. DC suspects, are they members of the Rittenhouse gang? I think that is the name of the gang I learned about in the Citizens Academy. Or is that info not something you can share right now?
It is something, as I said earlier, all the information we provided is all we can provide at this point. Kathy, while you're messing with that, I can take a couple that we received. So we received 3 questions 3 ways: in advance of the meeting, in here, as well as on Zoom. So one of the questions I guess is the statement: I would love to see our community have a broader conversation about public safety, including a conversation that does not start with an invitation to a meeting with police. Is this something Councilmember Gibson and other city leaders would be interested in organizing or participating in? Thank you. And before I turn it over to Councilmember Gibson, for those of you who aren't aware, we had a Reimagining Public Safety Task Force that looked at things not just involving police. It involved other departments within the city. I think it was 51 recommendations. The city has implemented 27. We are in the process of reviewing a lot of the other recommendations that involve more than police. As I said earlier, they involve the rec department. They involve health and human services. They involve our housing and community development section. So I think we're already doing that, but I think there's a question specifically to Councilmember Gibson, so I'll turn it over to him.
It was a broader conversation. Let me just see the question again. Having a broader conversation that doesn't start with the police is that start an invitation that about public safety without starting with the police. Sure, yes, we should, and it goes beyond Ward 3. We have. I'll be honest with you. I'm learning on the job what the issues are and finding out who the players are. And one of the players important in public safety is our police force, but it's not alone. So I'm open to that suggestion, and I'm pretty sure that the other 6 members of the council are as well.
And I think the format for that, and I know the mayor's in the back of the room. Kudos to her. She checked in. I didn't recognize her earlier. But I think she's committed. She was one of the 3 council members when she was a council member at the time who wanted this public safety task force, and she was on the subcommittee that developed it. So I know that she's committed to taking a look at that. So it's all encompassing. It's the police department, but it's also the city council giving us direction. So I think that's built in as kind of the next step. Another question we receive is what can the police working together with other city departments and cross-jurisdictionally do proactively to deter crime in and around Ward 3 and specifically along New Hampshire Avenue and Eastern Avenue? And I touched on some of that before. I think coming to events like this, reporting crimes as you see them, taking crime prevention tips and so on and so forth are a good step. I think it's really important that you all, especially you all that live in that Eastern Avenue corridor, are not only engaged with what goes on here in Takoma Park, but also a block or 2 away from you, because that impacts you. So if you're not on the listserv in the District of Columbia, you should be. If you don't attend meetings in the District of Columbia, it probably is a good idea, and vice versa with our D.C. residents. There's another question about this, and it's about food truck robberies. Those of you who are not aware, we've had 2 recent robberies of food truck companies on New Hampshire Avenue. Just so you know, New Hampshire Avenue on both sides, the Prince George's side and our side, has been a hot spot. Like I said earlier, when offenders are looking for crime areas, they're looking for an easy target. When I say an easy target, easy access and to get out of the area. So on those occasions, both of the suspects, I believe, fled into the District of Columbia. So the question was, do the 2 different food truck robberies on New Hampshire Avenue appear to be related? That was the first part. And what increased police presence is available and has been available to the food truck vendors? Are these types of businesses more exposed than other commercial businesses on New Hampshire Avenue? And does that factor into resource allocation? Though I understand other businesses have been robbed recently. I don't know that they're related. They are related? Okay. All right, you're going to have to get up. I'm too old to get up.
Okay, and regarding the 2 recent food truck robberies, investigators do feel they are connected. The description of the suspects appear to be the same, so they are actively investigating that and trying to gather video footage and other data to try to identify who these suspects are. These are the food truck robberies are the first that I'm aware of for quite a long time, so I don't think they're being targeted more than a commercial establishment would be targeted. I actually think commercial establishments are probably targeted a lot more. To me, I think it's a crime of opportunity. They see the food truck, they drive down the street, it's a quick hit, and they drive right into D.C. or run right across the line into D.C. So it's convenient for them. I mean, a long time ago, we used to have issues with gas station thefts where cars would pull into the gas station, open an unlocked door while the person's paying for the gas and steal their purse. And a lot of times the car's stolen and they just pull out and drive right into D.C. So, unfortunately, when you border D.C. line, the crime of opportunity to escape is there, and it makes it a little bit more difficult for us to catch these people. So.
All right, and I'm gonna touch on a couple more that we received in advance, and There's a question about which crimes or incidents get reported to the public and which don't. Could you clarify? Kathy, did you hear that question? Because I know you do the reporting out. There's a question about which crimes or incidents get reported to the public and which don't. Could you clarify? Meaning, what do we put out to the public in our community alerts? And just before Kathy says that, she does a fantastic job. I don't know of any other jurisdiction where you get daily updates with detailed information about crimes. Now, there was a question, Kathy, before, not to steal your thunder, before on this meeting about us putting out weekly ward-specific kind of call run logs of incidents. So if we did that, we would continue the daily kind of incident reports that are much more detailed. But there was a request for that, and I'm not sure if that's, by show of hands, who would like to see a weekly synopsis here of kind of just crimes. It just would list there was a theft on Woodland Avenue on a weekly basis. So we got a few. Okay. What we would be putting out is Councilmember Gibson asked, would it be by ward? And it would be other jurisdictions do that, and unfortunately they don't keep it in up to date. But it would be just a listing of each week we would put out, these are the incidents that occurred in Ward 3, Ward 1, et cetera. And it would be something that you could go back to and look 6 months later. You could go back and look and, well, I didn't know that happened. Let me check in October what happened. So we'll evaluate doing that. And sorry, Kathy, I'll reread the question. There's a question.
I understand it.
Okay, go ahead.
The short answer is I put everything out that happens, unless it involves a juvenile that we can't talk about, or if it's a larceny like from the Walmart or the Aldi's or where have you, because there's so many of those. I didn't think that everybody wants to hear about every single, larceny that takes place. I'll be happy to do that if the chief directs so, or you guys want to hear about it. Or if we end up doing that weekly report, we can add all the larcenies in there, and that way you can kind of see where all the larcenies are happening. But pretty much everything goes out unless I'm on vacation or Ron's on vacation, or it's been such a busy week I didn't get to it. There are some that I have probably missed in the past. I know I have. But when I'm told about them, I try to get them out as soon as I can after not having gotten them out, if that makes sense.
And I just want to reiterate, kudos to Kathy,
Thank
because
you.
it's a lot of work to get this out in real time. And most departments don't do this. They don't even give you weekly summaries, monthly summaries. So what we try to do is for real-time situational awareness, we want you to know what's occurring, and that's why we put the information out. Councilmember Gibson, you got to get on the microphone.
I just wanted to, if you would please clarify how to get these daily or maybe weekly alerts. How can residents get the daily crime alerts?
How the residents can get the daily crime alerts? You can sign up, go to our webpage, and it says Police Bulletin Sign Up. Just sign up there. You can pick and choose what you want to get from us. You can get the weather. You can get missing pets, missing people, burglaries, theft from autos, crime alerts. You can just pick and choose, and you can go in and change it as many times as you want if you get tired of hearing from me on some things. You can also see us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We don't have YouTube yet. But there's, and on regular emails when you sign up. So there's lots of places to go.
I'll turn it back over to questions here in the audience, and if we don't have any, I'll go to Zoom. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? In the back of the room, if we could get that mic to the gentleman in the back row.
I believe someone wrote in to, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate that. Thank you for all the help and assistance you've shown the community. My question is related. You said the shootings on 4th Avenue, the suspects are juveniles, and you have an inability to charge juveniles right now. Is the shots fired, since that's not, I believe it was the Tier 1 crime, is that something that a juvenile can be charged with? Or does it have to escalate before charges could take place?
I believe, and I'll let one of the detectives comment, I believe this would fall because of the nature of the crime. It would fall under what we could charge juveniles with.
Thank you.
We have one more here in the front. Claudine, I think that's another question right here in the front. Ron, if you could. If we could just remember, if you could, I know it's kind of weird to have it right up to your mouth, but if we could talk directly into it, the people at home can hear us.
Is this working?
I hear you.
You probably hear me. I know. Could you share with people how you inform, for example, people with disabilities about what their options are or how they communicate with you should something come up?
That's a really, really good question. And to those of you at home, I want to repeat the question in case you didn't hear. How do we inform and interact with people with disabilities? We have a very good relationship with POSNA, Parents with Adults with Special Needs. I have a younger brother who has special needs, so it's near and dear to me. A lot of our officers have specialty training on how to deal with people with disabilities, especially autism. I think it's really important that we understand our residents who have disabilities. So when we respond out, we understand in advance that we may be going to a resident that has disabilities. So we try everything we can for the officers to, when they're responding out, to be able to quickly discern that there's disabilities involved and be sensitive to that. Because a lot of times, that you may be mistaken for violent activity, or maybe mistaken for something that it's not. So it's something that we take, first and foremost, our officers understand, and they want to gauge. And you're going to have to take the mic. If you can just pass it to Lieutenant Williams. Our patrol commander wants to make a comment on this.
I'm going to address that question that you have, and I give an example of a family I just recently worked with. I had a parent reach out to me and say, hey, we've had to call the police several times, but sometimes the response we get is too many officers. And I said, okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about what's going on at home. So basically, we found that, don't call 911. Try to call us directly on the 270-1100 line. And you can, when you have a small police department, you can specifically ask. It's easier to ask for things. So we can kind of gear. I get overwhelming response can cause anxiety for people with special needs and things like that. So I suggest, hey, just tell the officer, tell the dispatch what you want. And we encourage that if you have that situation, to reach out to us so that we will know in advance, like, hey, my son is autistic, he's nonverbal, but he likes A, B, and C. So if you need to communicate, or they use communication boards or things like that. So that helps too if we know about your family in advance, so we know how to deal with it.
And Lieutenant Williams brought up an important thing. If you really want kind of a specialized request, call the 270-1100 number, because that way you'll be able to talk to our dispatcher that's familiar, maybe able to talk to a supervisor, and so on and so forth. The thing I wanted to mention related to people with disabilities is our mental health counselor pilot. We are hopeful to have that up on board within the next month or so. We received about $600,000 through the American Rescue Plan Act to have a pilot program to embed 2 counselors within city government. These counselors are going to be able to respond with the police to calls, violent calls. They're going to be able to respond back out proactively by themselves to address mental health issues within the city. Kind of the format that we use for our victim witness coordinator. So we're hopeful to have that on board. For those of you who are unaware, the county is expanding their mental health counselors by, I think they originally had like 4 or 6 counselors to over 20. I think it's a critical need, but I think that's something that is going to benefit our residents as well. See if I have any more in the audience, and then we'll go back to Zoom. All right, Kathy, want to take some on Zoom?
At the last meeting, it was noted that there would be an officer posted on 4th Avenue nightly until suspects were arrested. Has this been the case, and is it still the case?
Right on the aftermath of the incident that occurred, I think in November, I can't remember specifically, it may have been October, we had an officer there for a long period of time, specifically stationed there. Since that time, we've had directed patrols. We have our special assignment team, which is our undercover team, and we've saturated that area. Since we had the incident a week or 2 ago, we've had that continued presence overnight with a marked cruiser. Like I say, we're committed to having that presence there until we resolve the situation.
Are you finding that more of the crimes are armed?
I don't know. I wouldn't say specifically one way or the other. We just got the 2022 numbers, and it's hard to tell by just the raw numbers. But I wouldn't just come out and make that definitive statement now.
What are your biggest concerns for our safety in the coming year?
I really am concerned about the violent crime that is occurring in our region in general. We are kind of in a little bubble here in Takoma Park. We have a very, very safe community, but I think it's safe because of our residents, and it's safe because of the proactivity of our police department. That being said, not too far from here, we've had some really, really violent, horrific crimes. We had our Takoma Park residents killed in a parking garage not too far from here in Silver Spring. So I'm concerned about this violent uptick in crime, and a lot of it is committed by juveniles who now realize that there's not a lot of ramifications if they actually, if something actually happens. So I just am concerned that we need to make sure that we are holding people accountable for crimes. But like I say, if we don't go back to treating the root cause of it, then we're going to be stuck in this cycle of So we just had, before we get in, we just had Captain, was it Kelly? I don't want to get it wrong. Terry, sorry, I know I butchered it, and that's not even that hard. Just stepped in. I don't know if he wants to say a few words. I'm glad that the District of Columbia is here. I greatly appreciate him being here. And I don't know, Councilmember Gibson, do you want to make a comment, and then we'll turn it over to the captain if he wants to say a few words.
I just wanted to follow up in terms of the uptick or the violent crime in the area, and your concern, which we also are concerned about ourselves. And you talked about a proactive and an active community, and I want to hold up the various neighborhood organizations. I've had excellent conversations with the folks at Pinecrest and other organizations and listservs that connect people are really important. I strongly feel that this is a great city, in part because of our civic organizations, neighborhood groups. So you guys keep up the good work of connecting with each other and to the city as needed.
Hi, everyone. I'm Captain Terry. I'm with the Metropolitan Police Department in the 4th District, which obviously we border Takoma Park here. And mostly PSAs 406 and 401. I'm the Sector 2 captain, so I have PSAs 405, 406, and 407. That probably means nothing to anybody here. But PSA 406 is the Lamond Riggs, Takoma, Hampshire Knolls, that area. There's another captain that's in charge of 401, but I'm pretty familiar with this northern end of D.C., this northeastern edge of D.C. And I do work midnights, so this is like my 8 a.m. I work overnights. So I'm in charge of the midnight shift in the 4th District. So a lot of your overnight incidents that happen in Takoma Park that spill over into D.C. and vice versa. I will say Takoma Park has been great. The Takoma Park Police Department has been great, working with us, being very open with the communication and what's going on in your neighborhoods that might affect ours. And I hope that we're as open as Takoma Park Police Department is. I know one of the questions I get in a lot of my community meetings is, how well do we work with the surrounding jurisdictions? And I will say that I don't think that's ever been an issue between our two agencies, and I really appreciate that. I think this is the second community meeting of y'all's that I've been to. So I try to be involved because obviously crime doesn't just stop at the border. And I know that. Like the chief said, there are some bad actors in D.C. that are spilling over into your neighborhoods and affecting your neighborhoods, and and for that, our criminal investigation division, our crime suppression team, which is sort of our interdiction unit, they are proactive in going out and seeking out violent crimes and Part 1 offenses, the suspects for those things, and responding to those incidents. So they've been very active working along Kansas Avenue, New Hampshire Avenue, and some of our main thoroughfares where we get these issues. I was just looking at the stats. So it sounds like Takoma Park captures the stats a lot like we do. So any sounds of gunshots call we get, we respond to, and we take a report, even if there's nothing found. So that goes down as a sounds of gunshots report. If we do find shell casings, property damage, whatnot, we classify that accordingly. If there's property damage, it's obviously a destruction of property. If we just find shell casings, we used to not capture this, but this used to become an issue of, well, everything's lumped into sounds of gunshots, but you found shell casings. There's obviously a crime that has occurred here. So we actually shifted and started classifying those as unlawful discharges, which is actually a crime in D.C., of course. So I will say in the last year in 2022, between PSAs 401 and PSAs 406, we've had 30 unlawful discharges. Those are calls where we actually went and found evidence of someone discharging a firearm. We've had 30. Only 13 of those were on this northeast side, which are sort of bordering your neighborhoods. So it's a relatively low number for D.C. It obviously doesn't make the community feel that much safer. And I will say that's one of the things that we've worked. That's one of the loudest comments we've heard in our community meetings is the neighborhood just doesn't feel safe. And the 4th District had a 12% reduction in violent crime last year. That's the highest of all 7 districts in D.C. So we got our Violent Crime Reduction Award. So despite that, our neighbors are still telling us that they're feeling unsafe in their neighborhoods and they feel like it's a war zone. So obviously we take that complaint seriously. We don't rest on our laurels because we had a 12% reduction. Obviously, perception is reality. And, if a bullet's coming through your window, obviously there's an issue there. Whether there's one unlawful discharge a year or 50, So I will say that our criminal investigation division, our crime suppression teams, and our patrol units really work closely with the outside agencies. And we really try to just stem the tide of that sort of violent crime. And hopefully we can be integral in closing some of your unlawful discharges and some of your crimes.
We'll open it up since we do have the captain here. If anyone has specific questions, if we could just get the mic to Villas in the back. And if it's right now, these are specific questions for the captain from the District of Columbia.
Hey, good evening. I was wondering about the MPD citywide alerts that you guys get. Sometimes the suspects flee into Takoma Park, and the officers are not made aware of that. Is that something you guys plan on improving, communication between agencies?
Yeah, so I think real-time information is something that everyone kind of struggles with. So in DC, we have several different platforms we use to push that kind of information out. We have Nextdoor, we have Google Groups, we have a public alert system. So that's something we will discuss with Takoma Park about getting that stuff out real time. I know that do you guys have access to our radio channels? I assume so, yeah. So most of the agencies surrounding us have access to our radio channels. I didn't want to speak out of turn, just in case there's like a one-off. But Montgomery County has access to our radios. We can talk real time when things happen. I know Montgomery County, their helicopter, we probably several times a week will come over our radio and tell us what they have. Something's coming into DC and something to be on the lookout for. So even if we don't have that real-time public alert, between our agencies, we have that radio communication. But that's obviously something we can look forward for the public as well as pushing that information out to y'all.
Thank you.
So on January 19th, there was an incident that happened on Takoma Park, but there was also an MPD response. Was that a separate incident or the same incident? There were 3 MPD cars on Eastern Avenue on January 19th at 11:30 p.m. But was there a multi-jurisdictional response to that event? Captain Terry?
Yeah. What was the specific event on the 19th?
Shots fired, 5 or 6 shots. It was 11. It's the incident I was referring to earlier.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, a lot of times, even especially so close to the border, we'll get the calls routed to our 911.
Captain Terry, my name is Alex. I live on the corner of Eastern Ave and New Hampshire Ave. And I appreciate you being here, and I respect the spirit of collaboration that you're demonstrating with your kind words as it relates to your relationship with Takoma Park Police Department. But the community that I live in does not feel that collaborative effort. And in the last maybe 18 months, there have been probably 4 homicides within 50 yards of my house, several of which I've called in. And only one of them has been in our community. There's been others in Prince George's County, and there was one in DC on Sligo Mill Road in Eastern. A motorcyclist was shot. More recently, neighbors who are in this room have experienced frightening incidents that really tie closely and clearly to residents of the District of Columbia. And we have implored and received very responsive treatment from our police department for them to do their best efforts to resolve those issues. But they can only do so much. We are relying on the efforts of your team, who we see daily running up and down Eastern, to protect us. And I recognize that organizational constraints make collaboration difficult, but DC collaborates with dozens of law enforcement offices, federal, state, municipal, etc. And if we can do that downtown, I really wish we could do that in our neighborhood. I really wish we could work better across Eastern Ave to make my wife and I and our neighbors feel safer. And again, I appreciate you being here and all the work that you guys do. But please take this request seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's difficult, with some of the jurisdictional constraints, because obviously we can't enforce the laws in Maryland, and Maryland can't enforce the laws here in D.C. So, I think we're doing the best we can with what we had to work with, but obviously there's room for improvement. And I know the incidents you're speaking of, I think we were on the same meeting about the AutoZone several months ago. So I know that's a frustration within the community, and we will definitely work. I will implore my officers up in that area to be a little more proactive. And I've done walks in that neighborhood as well. I've heard the same complaints from residents on the DC side about not feeling safe in their own homes and whatnot. So obviously, we're not perfect, but we are working as best we can together. And in DC especially, we're sort of constrained by the U.S. Attorney's Office. Obviously, it's a federal agency which we have no oversight over, and they have no really the United States Attorney's Office. So even when it comes to us enforcing laws, getting search warrants, getting arrest warrants, that's something we struggle with as well. Just because it's an outside agency, like I said, it's a federal agency. We're a city agency. So we struggle with getting our needs met as far as getting criminals prosecuted and charged properly and whatnot. So obviously, like the chief said, this is sort of bigger than law enforcement, this issue. But we'll continue to work along the border, especially work with Takoma Park, and improve that relationship, and hopefully you guys will feel safer in your homes for sure.
Thank you, Captain. Do we have any questions for the captain on Zoom by chance? And then if not, we'll turn it back over to questions specifically about Takoma Park. And I just want to say I really appreciate the captain showing up. He's been here at 2 of our meetings, and he's willing to be here and hear these questions, which speaks volumes about him. So thank you so much for coming out. We have one more question for the captain, and I have the mic, so someone needs to come up and get it from him.
So this is for the captain. I understand this is well out of your control, but and actually, first, I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Chief DeVaul for immediately responding to me on a Saturday after one of the events. And all everything I've seen from the Takoma Park Police Department, has been great. So thank you. The question is, what is it going to take to get an MOU in place between the city of Takoma Park and MPD? It's been I believe a long history, most of which I am not aware of, but we have the mayor here. We have a lot of residents in Takoma Park that also, live and work in, that have lived before and work in DC. Are you aware at all of efforts to put an MOU in place, and how would that improve cooperation across the border and ability to actually mutually enforce the laws for crimes that take place in one jurisdiction and then have a suspect either originating from or fleeing into another?
You're really putting the captain on the spot. So a little bit above his pay grade. So I'll touch on some background for this. So for those of you who aren't aware, in 2018, we attempted to get an MOU with the District of Columbia, and we were in the final stages of getting that signed off. It had been created, et cetera, et cetera. So unless there are any more questions for Captain Terry. All right, see? Captain Terry, I was looking for a name tag. I was trying to cheat. Captain Terry, I'm going to turn it back over to questions specifically here about the city of Takoma Park. So I appreciate him coming out again. And if there are any questions that cross over, we'll turn the mic back over to him. So Ron, you want to grab that mic from him and give it to Kathy, and we'll go to questions on Zoom, because I think we've got a lot from the ones here. So.
Could you please repeat how many officers are out working at a time?
Absolutely. So the sworn strength of the Takoma Park Police Department is 43 sworn officers. We currently have 41 sworn officers and have just made offers to 2 police officers. I think we should have more officers, candidly. But on any given day, our normal shift allotment is 1 supervisor and 4 to 6 officers per shift. We have 4 patrol shifts that work 12-hour shifts. So that's, if it's day work, you may have some detectives working, you may have command staff working, but that's pretty much the norm is 1 supervisor and 4 to 6 officers.
Can charges be brought against the parents of a juvenile who recklessly play with a gun?
It depends on the circumstances. If there was negligence on the part of the adult and the storage of the gun and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of what ifs in that question.
What is the policy of the police department regarding regular and visible patrols?
As I stated earlier, we know where our hotspots are in the city. We allocated resources accordingly. If we know that we're having problems in a certain area, then we're going to patrol those areas. We also have a special assignment team, which is our plainclothes team, that you may not even see. They hit a lot of these hotspot areas. And the reason we're making these arrests is because our officers are in the right place at the right time, and our detectives are feverishly making these arrests. I don't know of any jurisdiction that's making these significant arrests. No offense to D.C., Mayor in the back. I'm sure you're making great arrests. But, they're making a difference. When you take one person off the street, bless you, Quincy Jones, who's responsible for possibly 40 different incidents in the city, because we charge them with I don't know how many. That's significant. But I would put our patrol officers up against any other patrol officers, and the same with our detectives and so on. But going back to what I said, and I said it, I'm going to repeat it. A lot of how we allocate our resources is based off of occurrences and situations. So if we don't get it reported, we're not going to have those numbers to accurately patrol. But, our officers are very, very proactive in what we do. We're a small city, so, it's important that you see us out there. Any other ones?
It seems that most of the more serious crimes committed in Takoma Park are done by persons who don't live here. However, are some of our residents committing crimes in other jurisdictions? Because if that is the case, then that would show that we need for the summer jobs program and other concerns is urgent. Sorry, I think that was more of a statement.
Well, I'll answer it, even though it was a statement. I usually don't answer statements, but I will say this: over 70. When we ran our crime numbers, and they're on our website, we did a 5-year deep data dump on arrests, traffic citations via demographics, via location, etc. Over 70% of crime in Takoma Park is committed by people that don't live in the city of Takoma Park. But if you're asking about the benefit of summer youth programs, we don't need to define it by boundaries. You help one kid, you're helping the entire region. So just if our youth are committing crime elsewhere, I don't the numbers aren't what I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about is getting help for youth that need it, whether or not they live in Takoma Park, Silver Spring, or DC. So I think that these programs are beneficial. So if our program helps our Takoma Park youth, that's a win. If DC's program might help some of our youth, that's a win. So I would never want to not have programs to benefit our residents just because our residents aren't committing crimes, if that makes any sense.
There's just 3 more right now. Thanks for having a presence since the incident. Any more plans on how to make 4th Avenue and surrounding areas safer, such as perhaps lights on darker areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the other questions. And when we talk about a holistic view of public safety, it's not just police, but it's also infrastructure. So that is an area that could use some increased lighting. It could possibly use some, restrictive access and so on and so forth. So we work directly with our Public Works Director, Daryl Braithwaite, and others in Public Works to address those things. But I think it's important that we take a look. So when we have incidents like that, that's an important element of trying to prevent crime. As I said earlier, we don't want to make easy targets. And if you have dark areas where street lights aren't present and you don't have good infrastructure, or you have bushes that are overgrown, where someone can lay in wait, it becomes a problem. So it's definitely something we're looking at specifically in the 4th Avenue area. I suggest those of you who live in that Eastern Avenue corridor, if you have specific concerns about street lights or the lack thereof light, or maybe infrastructure, that you reach out to me and or Daryl Braithwaite, the Public Works Director, alert us of the situation, and we can go out collectively and take a look at it. There's also, one thing we haven't talked this evening about is traffic enforcement. There's also a system in place for traffic calming through the city where we can request speed bumps and so on and so forth. So I think that it's important. If we don't know about it, we might not become aware because there might not be incidents. But anything we can do to create infrastructure that lessens the opportunity for criminals to go out and commit crimes is where we want to be.
How can we help increase the size of the police force if needed, and is that something the city council can approve?
Well, yes. Simple answer is yes and yes. I believe that we could absolutely use more police officers. And I think the more police officers we had, the more proactive we could be, not only with our enforcement, but also with our community outreach programs and so on and so forth. Right now, our detectives do a fantastic job. We have Detective Charles Earl in the room, but we only have a sergeant and 2 detectives right now handling all these cases. They do a phenomenal job, but we could have 2 more detectives to investigate these crimes. We could have 2 more special assignment team officers, but those officers are needed in uniform because we do not have enough officers. So when I first got here in 2018, I requested 2 additional officers. I got 1 additional officer. So I think that we need more officers in the city. Obviously, that's a much bigger issue that involves city management. It involves evaluation from the city council. And I don't know if Councilmember Gibson wants to. No, he doesn't want to. Why did I expect him not to comment on that? So I think we do have one more question online.
Have there been additional patrols in the Sycamore Woodland area avenue lately? We haven't seen any, and it seems that anywhere there is construction happening, now would be a good time for visible presence.
Yes, we have increased patrols in that area. And just to give, I like to give the perspective to make people understand when we patrol and we have 4 to 6 officers working the road, if we get a call, most of those officers, depending on the type of call, if we have a major call, those officers are going to be tied up with that call because now you have witnesses and you have victims and you have things that you have to do. So that takes those officers away from patrol. And I don't know if most of you know, but the city, Takoma Park, has at least 75 miles of street that has to be covered. So if you're trying to drive 75 miles to, well, I don't see the police, well, you may not have if we drove by, but, you know, realistically, can we drive by your house 6 times in one night? I don't know. If there's nothing going on, maybe. But that's the perspective of the reality. But yes, anytime, like the chief said, when we have hot spots, we deal with the situations in patrol. So it's constantly changing and evolving. If something else happens, then we move that resource to that location and so on and so forth. So it's constantly a moving, just a cycle. And also just when I was talking to the captain earlier, just to give you what happened today, in addition to the arrest that we had, there were 40 calls for service today. 40 calls of constantly running and gunning the roads because of all the stuff going on. More officers per capita. And also going back to per capita, for us to be about 2.5 square miles, for having a small police force, you are getting more officers per capita than you would in a major city. A major city is not going to be able to tailor your needs like we can. So that's another good reason why we have a small department.
All right, is that all of the questions on Zoom? So I think we've answered all of the questions that we have. Does anyone else have any other questions in the room? Kathy, can you tell me how many people joined via Zoom? I just want to get a good idea of how many people we had collectively, because 60 people. So that's a real testament to you guys in Ward 3. I appreciate that. Anyone that's emailed me, I'll respond. If you have any issue, people know I respond to you, whether or not it's Saturday, whether or not it's Sunday, whether or not, I'll respond. So if you have any concerns that we didn't cover, please email me and we'll make sure that we get back with you. And it looks like Councilmember Gibson wants to make one final thought before we log off.
Question in terms of police presence, and this was briefly touched on at the VFW discussion, and that is police presence on bike or on foot, which I believe that's one strategy. Could you tell me how that strategy is working, and how it's progressing?
Yeah, we absolutely utilize bike and foot patrols, mainly in our business districts, Tacoma Langley Crossroads and the Carroll Avenue corridor. We recently purchased a bunch of electric bikes, which makes it much easier to get around on patrol. Because traditionally, if you had a bike and you were 2 miles away from your car and you got a call, it took you forever to get back to your call. So those bikes can go. I'm not going to tell you the speed that Sergeant Sims has got them up to, but they go pretty fast. So they're a great resource. So we value traditional foot patrols and traditional bike patrols. Those are something we do frequently, as I said earlier, mostly in our business districts because we just get more bang for the buck. We can hit a lot of the businesses all in one, but it's something that we do as a traditional patrol. All right, well, I will wrap it up by just saying I greatly appreciate all of you taking the time to come out and meet with us. We are committed to making sure that you all are safe and secure. That is our job. We're committed to being professional and respectful in all of our interactions. That's why I love this city. I grew up in this city, and I value what you all bring to it. So with that, I appreciate it. And this will be available as well as the PowerPoint on our website in the near future. Have a good evening.